Hey everyone, welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is Anika and I will be your host today. I hope you're doing well. I am here with Cyn today. Hey Cyn, how you doing?
Hey.
Welcome everyone to the stream. Hi and welcome on in. I see Wade, Carol, Clever in the chat. Hey Clever, how you doing? Katerina, welcome on in everyone. Let us know where you're joining from and I hope you're having a great Thursday so far. We have Cyn over here for day one. Cyn created this really inspiring NASA inspired images patterns. Wait, patterns? Aren't we doing that today, Cyn?
Yes, we're doing the pattern section today, but we did some really cool stuff yesterday, very experimental.
Nice. Yeah. If you missed the stream from yesterday, go ahead on both Behance and YouTube. We have replays up over there as well. And if you're joining us on Behance and YouTube, hi and hello. Welcome on in. I just want to give a friendly reminder to all of you all, wherever you're joining us from. We had Amina El Kabani earlier today for a photography stream. Make sure to check it out. Both replays are available both replays. Yes, day one and day two. All of them are available both on Behance and YouTube. Learn how to elevate your photos for small businesses or brands using Lightroom Classic. I know she was editing iPhone photography, which was really inspiring and fun because usually we just think and intimidated by photography in general and think if we don't have a professional equipment we can't do that, but hey, you can. So make sure to watch the replay. There was also Jack Watson hosting the Illustrator Creative Challenges every weekday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Tune in and challenge yourself with a new prompt each day. I think Jack is also in chat, so if you have any questions you can also put them in the Discord, get feedback from our mentors and all of the good stuff. So without further ado, Cyn, do you want to introduce yourself? Give us a quick
Sure
recap of day
thing.
one and
Yeah.
also talk about what you're doing today.
Yeah, all good stuff. All good stuff. So my name is Cyn Lagos. I am a street photographer, graphic designer, among so many really fun stuff. Yesterday, we got to experiment with different abstract shapes inspired by NASA's web images. And those were really, really cool. We grabbed some inspirations from the color palettes. We grabbed some inspirations from the shapes. And then we went a little wild, I think. We started making some butterflies at some point. It's kind of cool.
Yep.
We played a little bit with typography also. And all in all, I think we learned a few tools. We got familiarized with a few tools on Illustrator that can be repurposed in many different ways. Today, we're going to be using some of those different abstract shapes and learn how we can make gigantic patterns with them that you can then utilize for spaces, real life spaces, like, for example, wallpapers or actually, I didn't download a t-shirt, but I downloaded a pillow. I don't know why that was priority in my mind, but that worked out that way. Yeah, so we're going to learn how to mock up those items on Photoshop in a few different ways. And I know that can sometimes be a bit daunting for some. I definitely found a few ways that worked out for me, and I welcome any new ones from the chat.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited to get started. I think making mockups is also my most favorite part when I'm doing any kind of graphic design. So I'm really pumped for the stream. Let us know in the chat if you guys have ever created something similar, if you've created patterns, and if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them in the chat. We have a really supportive community here. So yeah, let's dive into what we did on day one. Are we doing that, or are we just straight diving into patterns?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna showcase a little bit here. I didn't slide through here, but I just wanted to wanted you guys to see the images that we were inspired by. There's definitely more James Webb space images, but these are the ones that I think have gone viral on the web. And and it's fairly surprising, but at the same time not. It's some of the sharpest images outputted, and it's really quite fascinating to be able to see some of these. I know it's been a long time coming. I think we've had this telescope up since the 90s. With a few hiccups along the way. And you can just imagine if you're in the craftsmanship of photography, you could just imagine how would you feel if your lens was was dirty, and you try to capture the picture and then it came out blurry and it wasn't quite right. It would hurt your heart, right? Well, these are the images post that, and that's pretty amazing. And I think it's worth applauding. So we grabbed some inspirations. Some of these stars were replicated in our illustrations here, and you can just see how interesting it is to dive into the graphic style of things and really minimize the detail into like basic shapes. Really interesting perspective that I actually got from my wife. She was telling me she doesn't really know how to draw in the way that I know how to draw. And I realized, as I was trying to teach her, and I realized that it's because we translate things to just smaller and less detail, just minimal ideas. So go from something this complex to something a little bit like this, that just a little bit of repetition can begin to translate that idea into something that is more intriguing and more compelling, right? Now, one single line wouldn't have done that. Definitely that repetitiveness. And not to mention the color play. We regarded quite a bit about the use of light colors versus darker colors, and how that can give us a really interesting optical illusion on some of these shapes that begin to start to look like they're 3D elements. Even though these are created in Illustrator, we actually didn't use any 3D rendering or anything like that for this. This is all an optical illusion of using darker and lighter colors to kind of emulate that sense of dimension, which, you can kind of just go in there and just really enjoy it, because it's kind of like space in a way. It just goes on forever.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned how the images were blurry first, and then it transformed over 2 decades, honestly. And
wow.
It's really fascinating for me to experience this, because this is just so inspiring, because you were essentially taking such complex imagery and translating it into simpler shapes and forms for anybody to use. And I think that's really, really inspiring and fun.
Yeah, so, I think so too. I think I'm going to be grabbing some of these and begin creating a few of the pattern elements. I did encourage those of you who followed us yesterday that went home and started to play around with this and experiment on your own to create these shapes into like a square dimension, just to kind of allow you to create that pattern, which is our next step. So I'm going to grab one of these. I really like this one. I think it ended up kind of being a fun result of yesterday's experimentation. And it's sort of like, I think it looks like a melted CD from the 2000s. Yep. Or what did we say? Dali inspired.
Yeah.
So I'm going to create a new document here. I start with like a 1080 by 1080 at the basis. We'll see if that changes down the road, but we're not going to get too technical on that spec. But just knowing that you have a fairly high resolution can be helpful down the road.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to place this in.
With Illustrator, it doesn't really matter because you can scale everything up and down.
Yeah.
So much, which is essentially really good. Yeah. Very handy.
Oh my God, that's one of the reasons why we love Illustrator, I think.
Yeah.
So I have this object selected, and I'm working currently under the Essentials workspace, not the Essentials Classic. So if your Illustrator doesn't look quite like mine, just switch that over. Or if you have a custom Illustrator workspace, that's awesome. I love custom stuff.
Absolutely.
And all of
gotta
these.
Have Cyn 1, Cyn 2, Cyn 3.
Yeah. Nothing escapes you.
Yep. I also have a custom workspace, but I think I mostly use an Essentials Classic because it has the control bar on top. And that really helps when there are a lot of things on the artboard or on the side, and then you can't see the properties panel, perhaps. I mean, there's something always hiding it. So
Right.
sometimes I just like using the control bar at the top with the Essentials Classic because that gives me a lot of options as well without going to the menu bar. So I
Right.
think
That's
that's very
interesting.
handy. Yeah.
Which ones we prioritize because we use more
Yeah.
often too.
Yeah.
So for this one, I'm going to go into object, pattern, pattern make. And I know Annika mentioned yesterday, she really enjoys this because she gets to kind of provide a pattern to her clients, and it's fairly easy to make, but it
Yeah.
can feel a little bit like, wait, okay, so I made a pattern. What else can I do? There's definitely a few ways to customize it. So I'm going to make this pattern here. And so this panel pops up, kind of interesting too. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Okay. So this panel pops up and we have a few options. So you can see already we've created a form of a pattern, and that's just based on, and if you notice also the swatches popped up and you're like, why did that pop up? I don't know. So a swatch is already created for you there in case you want to save it. I'm going to get rid of that for now. But yes, we have this, and that already looks really interesting. It's a little bit too tightly spaced for my taste. So I like to go into this little button here and click size tile to art. Sometimes it can get a little bit cumbersome, like, wait, how do I move these guys? Well, size tile to art can give you a little bit more personalization. So I'm going to just put a random number here. I do wish these numbers were like toggled, so I can just toggle between how many options.
Yeah.
Because I just started to pick my favorite numbers and it's just random.
Curious,
I actually,
since you mentioned the toggle and a bar there, do you ever use the repeat grid for making patterns at all?
The repeat grid, like just repeating them independently.
So once you're done with this, we can go through that together.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah. So we have a little bit more spacing. I think I want a little bit more spacing on the horizontal side. So let's go into maybe like double that.
I love that this gradient stroke is giving it such a fun effect as well, even like as the shape moves and transforms. Val in the chat also agrees. Val says, I'm really loving this shape.
Yeah, me too. I think, the gradient gives it a bit of dimension too here on the darker sides.
Yeah.
And so we have this really interesting set of options here, and we're able to just kind of modify it for ourselves. I also like playing with the tile type. And I think that although I really like how organized this looks, it depends if your graphic it looks a little bit more complex. It might be nice to aim for something, a pattern that's more organized like this one, or go for something that it's a bit more funky being the theme of our project. And so this starts to kind of look a little more cool here, brick by row or brick by column, right? So row being horizontal, columns being vertical. We have hex. Ooh. So it creates this determined boundary around it. And again, even with these, you can still change that distance. Okay. And so because the distance changed quite a bit after that. So you can start to see how that ends up looking like together. And then we have hex by row. So you can see a few things are become like a common variable here. It's either by row or it's by column. So you do a brick or you do a hex, or the most organized of them all, you do the grid system. Yeah. And so in here already you can begin to name it, and let's name it Dali's.
What's your favorite type of tile or the most used that you think? Do you often make a grid pattern?
I think I really end up using a lot like bricks by row, because it gives it that level of just being a bit more dynamic. But if it's a very simple shape, I use that quite often. Like maybe you want polka dots. You don't want them all to be straight. right? You can make things like polka dots here, or maybe you want like something like a checker that will immediately create a checker system by just using a square, which is really interesting to just like be able to create a checker right away. So yeah, bricks by row tends to be one of my favorites. Least favorite would be hex by column, because I think things start to unify a little bit where the eye can't detect it as well. So the pattern can feel chaotic. I would recommend it if you were doing like an illustration of flowers or something of the likes. Then it makes sense because they embed in a very seamless way where you can't even see it, the edges, and not detecting it is actually an attribute. And it looks much better that way.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've made floral patterns before and I chose hex, but I did not think about all of that, but it does make sense.
Yeah, I think there's like, I try to organize the method to the madness, right? Just like if I use this, should I use it trivial, just out of like a trivial choice, or should I start making like a methodology to everything? If you use it quite frequently, especially, I always kind of sit back and consider, if I had to do like a giant amount of these, how would I be making these decisions just to organize my train of thought? So I'm going to be saving this copy, and these guys up here are kind of hard to detect. There's a long time there that I was like, how do I get out of here? Right. So there is a button back here that shows you how to go back, to cancel it, to save a copy, because I did create one already. So we can create, say we were to create a copy, then we can call it what we want here, to at least CD. Right. New patterns have been added to the swatches panel. Awesome. So where in the swatches panel, that's always kind of like a tricky thing. Some of these colors are already included in here, and maybe some of them are part of your swatches. Maybe you want to keep them, but I like to select all unused so that I have a chance to have a visibility of the one that I want to keep. And so unselect that one that I want to keep, and then be able to remove the other ones. Or you can actually view them via a list, and that can give you a bit more order to the madness if you want to, like, say, group the ones that you have created, like Dali's and Dali CD. I'm going to group them here. Oh, cannot group.
Yeah, it's weird with gradients and pattern swatches.
Just grouping your color palettes will kind of give you more order there, I think. Yeah. Okay. I think that's always interesting to be able to like find where in some softwares you can do something and in others you can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And another thing that I find that is helpful is to be able to dim the copies. If I want to modify this element here, for example. So I have my copies. You can tell that the copies are the ones around it because you can dim them. And this is the one that's most colorful. Oops. That was kind of...
That is so fun. I feel like this would look great on like the dimmed copies effect would look great on a darker background. Especially since you mentioned like a cushion cover design or something, that would look great on those dim copies would be a fun variation.
So the dim copies kind of give you an opportunity also to just see your main shape, the one that is, of course, it's in the middle at the moment. But if you were to kind of lose track of it, you have the ability to go in here and start to, like, say, modify it if you want to, like, make it smaller or make it bigger or change the color palette. You have that opportunity to do that. Still, like, we keep talking about having a workable file, right? Like a non-destructive file, so that you can continue to make choices along the way. So if I was to make another modification on this one, then I should be able to still do that without having to worry that, like, it's done. There's no more changes to that, right?
Yeah.
And you can modify it. I kind of like that.
I also like that. Yeah.
Oh, can't let go. I actually left my color background behind So
Yeah.
what we're going to do is like, okay, I made a pattern. So how
Mhm.
can I find that pattern? How can I use that pattern, right?
Yeah.
I'll just get rid of this guy here. So we're going to grab the rectangle tool
Mhm.
and we're going to, this one has a stroke already, but I want actually the foreground. So let's pick that foreground on the left-hand side. So make sure it
Yeah.
comes to the foreground and we're not applying our pattern to a stroke. If that is what you want to do, that's really interesting. Ooh, that's something else. So this is a gradient selection. And in the same fashion, we can select a color, we can select a gradient, but in the same way, you can also select a pattern. So that starts to kind of apply to anything I want. And then what's interesting here is that you want to be able to then maybe zoom out a little bit and start to see some of these patterns. Let's see. Marquee tool. If I was to do it this way, it might be a better way of showing it. You can see how it goes on forever. And then if you want to make sure these patterns match, you might want to make sure that these edges don't end up being sort of flailing like this. So I like to...
Do you think we can do that with like spacing? Is that what it is?
I like to kind of close in that boundary box so that and usually I select both at the same time. I didn't do that here, but just so that it closes that out. And sometimes you'll touch it and you'll see that, oh wait, but that just makes it smaller. If you hold I think it's command here. If you hold command, you're able to then modify that point. And that used to drive me nuts. Like, wait, hold on. How come I can't go in here and make them smaller again in the same way that it started, right? How come I can't do that? But another way to be able to do that, I'll show it to you in a little bit. But that is pattern number 1, and we'll leave it at that. We have it on our swatches, and I think we can access it later. So let's...
looking pretty cool. Yeah.
It's looking pretty cool, I think.
Tiffany also allows the colors in the gradient and also says that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of colors. So I'm going to try to make another one. I really like this one. I think this is one of our chat's favorite yesterday.
Yeah. The blend effect, but not really.
Yeah. Everybody was guessing it's a blend effect. I know it. If we were running like a lottery, somebody would have won because in the other ones, it was definitely the blend effect. Okay, so let's paste this one in here.
Tiffany in the chat has a question about patterns. Tiffany asks, I thought the overlapping edges were the best way to ensure your pattern is seamless. Is that not the case? I think they're wondering about why we use the direct selection tool to remove the extra ones we had on the side.
I don't really understand the question. Come again?
I think the fact that the pattern is repeating and you made it in the way with the pattern maker is essentially ensuring that there wouldn't be extras when we have a shape. Yeah. And they were just wondering why you use the direct selection tool.
Oh, yeah. So I guess I started to kind of consider my process usually because inside of Illustrator, you're right, I could probably just modify that. But because later we're going to bring it into Photoshop, I want that selection to be one of the closest ones that I will be using in my final project. And if I have to modify it in Illustrator, okay, I can do that because it's still a workable file. But it's just one of those things that I just want to make sure each edge is perfect and I don't have to come back to Illustrator to modify it. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. I hope that answers your question, Tiffany.
So we're going to go into object pattern, make. There you go. And these are really tightly bound.
Ooh. Yeah, very close together.
Yeah, it almost kind of looks like a continuous curve.
I think that could look cool. I think even without introducing space, that could look really cool. It kind of reminds me of like very funky light fixtures. Um,
Oh, you're already
yeah,
in the
like
home mindset. I
yeah,
should have
I
gotten
mean,
light fixtures.
you got to think like what you're making, right? You got to think about the target audience. I feel like with like
Yeah.
interior design, this would be such a perfect hit with like that kind of wire structure and the colors, because then the light would emit, like, I don't know, it's just fun, very fun.
I love how you're going into this. We have a target audience. We have a
Absolutely.
client.
Of course, you
We,
have a target audience. We talked about how we are fans of up above and down below, and both of us would have that
yeah.
in our home. I mean,
Oh
without
yeah,
a
that's
doubt.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see, how would this one look in a hex by column? Ooh, that's pretty neat.
Haley in the chat says bubbles, and then Val adds space bubbles.
Space
Nice.
bubbles. Imagine that was the terminology like we used, as opposed to, what was it here? The name. Oh, they were not that complicated actually.
They're
They're
actually
the
not. Yeah.
Stefan's quintet, Karina's nebula. Just, space bubbles. That's all they are. Yeah, I think I like this one here. I'm gonna save this as space bubbles.
Let's do it.
Oh,
Yeah, chat. If you want, you can give us names for the patterns. That's really actually a fun exercise.
yeah.
Yeah. Happy to incorporate some of the names. Space bubbles is a fun idea. So do you already know what kind of background you're going to use for all of these patterns, or are you just going to use the hidden trial and see what works out?
Sometimes I like including the background and the pattern,
Hmm.
but that kind of limits the distance that I can create without them starting to create a gap. And I'll show
Yeah.
you one in one of these examples so we can see. So I'll add the background post
Yeah.
having created the pattern. But that could be something that, you can make a decision on if you still want to. Like, for example, this could go on something white or it can go on something dark. It,
Yeah.
kind of helps out to have that option.
Nice.
Right. Let's pick one here with a color pattern. Maybe we do our stars.
Let's do it.
And
Looking at chat, we're already 30 minutes in. Can you believe it? What is time? If you're just joining us, yeah, right?
I'm so shocked.
If you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining us here on Adobe Live. We're live both on Behance and YouTube. So if you have any questions for us, let us know in the chat and I will read them to Cyn. And we can incorporate all your name suggestions for all the patterns we're making today.
Yeah.
I think this is really fun and exciting because we're going to be working on mockups later and dive into Photoshop. So Cyn is going to show us some new masking techniques, some of her workflow as well. So I'm really excited to learn from you. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think you're so funny. What is time? It just had me thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a rhetorical question there. Kind of a heavy question there. But yeah, I feel like when we're live, we just don't really, it's so ecstatic for me because you're just so in depth with everything and you're talking and chatting and learning at the same time. And it's just, you have no idea how the 2 hours fly by.
Should we name the stars? I've been naming them estrellas, which is the Spanish of stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of what that looks like, having that bounding box in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting to think of, like, if I just stretch that bounding box or like move it to the side, you can start to see how it appears. Right. But just moving those tiles around can get a little tricky. So, because now we have gaps.
Ooh, okay.
So
see that coming. Oh, so is that because the background is small, or is that because of the bounding box?
Yeah, because the background is small. So it's just imitating that. So sometimes I try to refrain from using it until post. Maybe there's a workaround that, but I find unless I really need to do, maybe I don't need spacing. Like in this one, I actually really like the spacing of the stars that I had already created.
Yeah.
So that square came quite ready to just become a pattern and look really cool and dynamic. Now we start to play with some of the different tile types. It still is nice and tightly bound. So it's interesting how in the past patterns we were really against being tightly bound, and then this one it's really nice because we can get to keep our background.
And yeah, it's so fun to see because I don't think I've ever included a background when making patterns. So this is fun.
Yeah. So if you're going to include that background, definitely include it as a square,
Yeah.
unless you intentionally are trying to create a circle. Ooh, it makes another star. There you go.
Oh,
That's
wow.
our
That is fun. Yeah, that is a nice, happy accident.
that is a nice happy accident. What are the odds?
Oh, we got to save that.
We
Gotta
just
save it.
right.
Oh, what? That is so fun. I love that.
We're just bumping into a lot of really cool experimental stuff here. I love it.
I love that
Right.
feeling when you're just so inspired when you create something experimental and then it just is so motivational. It's like validation for you and you just keep going on after that. So I feel
Right.
like,
We reach that like cool flow that
yeah,
we
yeah,
refer to.
yeah,
So it's nice not to have too specific of a guideline, right? I mean, a specific of a rule, more like a guideline. That's always neat. So we have another pattern. Ooh. I wonder what this one's going to look like. I'm just curious. This one does have a black background
Ooh,
also.
yeah, that's
It
gonna
could
be
end
fun
up
to
being
see.
a large space. Let's see.
Oh, yeah. Haley also agrees. So fun. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool because from here you can honestly, when it comes to patterns, yeah, they're fun to make, but if you really wanted to think about like how can I repurpose some of my artwork into real life materials that I can maybe sell on different platforms like Etsy, maybe your own shop, I feel like that
Yeah,
can become a really nice outlet for artists that we just draw because we're enjoying it, right? We do it regardless, but just developing it into a pattern can become more accessible for an audience to want to like purchase it now, you know.
yeah.
Also just a singular art is also really cool. I've been really loving showcasing some singular work and just having wall art. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I love
Yeah.
having wall art is one of my favorite things to like have my own work out around the house because it just motivates you, right? Like to get, I remember the first time I printed a photograph. I think it was a
Yeah.
photograph. Yeah. It was a photo and it was during a really cool workshop for Canon and they
Mhm.
printed it on this amazing Canon printer. So it wasn't just any like first print. It was the first print and it was about yay
Yeah.
high. And I just remember just like thinking, wow, this feels like it's my birthday or
Hmm.
like something really special. So ever since I
Yeah.
just became really in love with seeing some of these digital things that we create into some real life material. And I encourage you to try it out too.
Absolutely. What would someone be doing different if they decided to print something like, let's say, the star pattern?
I think depends where you would get it printed. I mean, there are some really cool uh, platforms out there like Society6 that lets you just provide a high resolution file that
Yeah.
is RGB and then they figure out the rest. So you don't have to kind of worry too much about those technical hiccups.
Yeah.
But there are really cool Pantone swatches that, you know, can help you select some of these gradients beforehand.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And Pantones are nothing but like, you know, being able to have this swatch for this specific unique color and someone can actually replicate it in real life. That's pretty awesome. Like exactly the way you
The
want it.
same. Yeah.
It's like wanting to paint your wall, but you get the wrong swatch. I mean, that would suck.
Yeah. Val in the chat says if you draw a few cute little characters, turning those into a textile pattern could be great in first. Is that what you meant? And I just went ahead and said yes. But
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you did mean that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
think, have you ever considered being like a surface pattern designer? Because I think you're great at making patterns and it's actually a
you're
thing.
so funny.
No, surface pattern designers are everywhere for everything that you see. I think in all our houses we have like patterns all around us, but we just don't notice them because they're
Right.
just so commonplace and we just miss them. And I feel like,
Hmm.
I don't know, have you ever considered being someone that just makes patterns? And they can be complicated, trust me,
I didn't
especially
even
with like
know that could be
floral
next
stuff. Yeah.
next time I introduce myself, I'll be like, I make patterns. You know, I'll get that gig.
Next on your
With
list. Yeah.
Adobe Capture, I've definitely become really like curious about like just textures around my house, textures outdoors.
Yeah.
More obvious would be like foliage elements. I mean, I was taking pictures of all of my plants, and
Mhm.
that was really really fun. It's interesting in the different ways that your environment can end up influencing your artwork, right? Like in this
Absolutely.
case,
Yeah.
we are directly influenced by an image. Unfortunately, we can't see that with our bare eyes, but some of the things that are around you can inspire your color palette, which is can also be captured with Adobe Captured. And yeah, I think textures would be a really neat thing to check out. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever seen like some close-up images of like an orange or like a close-up
Yeah.
image?
Yeah.
Yeah, like very macro, and you
Yeah.
just all you see is a pattern in it.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. I
Hmm.
think this one definitely has to be like a grid system. It starts to get a little weird here otherwise.
Oh,
And then we
hexagon does
can
not work for this one.
hexagon does not work,
Yep.
right?
Oh, this could potentially work. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe like a wallpaper, since you mentioned that earlier. I think this sort of overlaps the black
Let me
background.
see.
I think that's what it does.
It might
It
be a
could
bit
be. It
too
could be fun.
many. This is I didn't even mention the copies that can actually determine how many you actually have within your pattern at once.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I tend to leave it at 3 by 3 just to be able to see it myself. Um, Here 5 by 5 looks cool too. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go with the grid. I could always like
Oh wow. I love that this can be animated as well. Now that you
I know
mentioned that
that
last time. Yeah.
I feel like there has to be now a session where we animate one of these just
Yep.
to
I think you
because
should do
it's
it either way. I mean, it would be fun to
it's
see on one of your live streams as well, because I know you live stream on Behance. So I think it would be a fun
yeah.
transition into the live streams, maybe animating some of these.
Yeah, I actually have been yeah, I think that's a great idea. I love being able to like go from I think this one it has a version here where we
Yeah.
created a poster design and I couldn't help but animate it. But plot twist, I did the animation in Photoshop.
What? You can do
Yeah.
that?
Yes, you can do that. You can do that, which I
Yeah.
part of the reason why I was motivated to share it was because it was kind of like an intro for me to be less intimidated by a timeline. And so
Yeah.
using Photoshop, like I said, Photoshop is my favorite Adobe app. And because it has just so many different things, it has its foot on everything.
Mhm.
And yeah, we did very simple things, transitioning from big to small, but we were able to make this really cool shape here, that circle, and we were
Yeah.
able to make it glow with opacity. I mean,
Very
pretty simple,
fun.
right? But
Yeah.
just consider it. It's an interesting step along the way. So if you think you have to be like a super pro animator to be able to make some of these effects, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, really. Those folks are amazing, but also,
Yeah.
but
I
also,
love
yeah. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. I was just saying that I also love the Photoshop timeline. I think that it's very underrated sometimes, and a lot of people don't even explore it. I mean, especially the beginners who don't know that Photoshop can be used in versatile ways. I think that that's such a neat feature. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I don't know what to call this. So I'm calling it glob. Uh, My written energy today is a little bit different from yesterday's. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that one there, and I really like
Wait,
it.
did we just call that glob?
Yeah.
Okay, glob. Okay, got it.
Glob. Yeah, it
Blob
sounds.
that glows. That makes sense.
I think I'm gonna go
Um,
for.
So when you mentioned that you use Adobe Capture to make patterns, can you use those patterns somewhere?
Um.
And if so, how do you use those patterns from Adobe Capture? Do you
Yeah.
save it to
Interesting.
libraries or something like that?
Yes. Yeah. So they get included within your libraries, and you can
Yeah.
choose to modify them afterwards. I don't know if I have like oh, here. How interesting. These are some of the elements that I did capture on Adobe Capture with like the vector shapes.
Mhm.
And that's my plant. That's one of my plants.
Wow. Okay.
I know. I'm introducing you guys to my plant, and this is another one here. Oh,
So were these
oh.
just the images that you captured inside your house? Is that something like that?
Actually, ironically enough, this plant is dying. It's the little hair on the top. It got too much sun, so it
Oh,
didn't make
yeah.
it. But yeah, this set came with a pattern. I think it's this one here, or I think it
Mhm.
was my the picture of a heart that I took. But yeah, you do collect it creates a pattern for you, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And then like you get this one's out of an image, but you can actually then, choose to modify that
Yeah.
pattern. But that is through Adobe Capture. I think this is another one of the plant.
Yeah.
And
I think these are exported as JPEGs, and then when you go back to Adobe Capture or the software that you used to initially create them, you can go ahead and change the
yeah.
settings and tweak whatever preferences you want.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, I really like this one, but I definitely like the vector. We all like the vector option much more.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted
Yeah.
to play on Photoshop, yeah, so there's different. I definitely have to organize my library. There's a lot of goodies in here. They're fun. The library is definitely one of my favorite things that has developed.
Love it. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't include the background on this one. Wonder. I'm going to create this one more. How are we doing with time, just in case?
We're about 40 minutes in, so I think we're good. We have
Nice.
the artist spotlight at the 90-minute mark,
know.
so that's really exciting.
I'm
If
excited
you're
about
watching
that.
this, if you're watching this and you don't know what artist spotlight is, it's actually a segment that we have usually on day 2 of our live streams, and we highlight a creative from the community or someone that you've known the work from and have been inspired of, basically. And you can put in their names in our little artist spotlight tab right above chat. So if you're watching this on Behance, it's right above chat, and you can go in, give us your recommendations, and maybe we can highlight them in a future artist spotlight. But we have that at the 90-minute mark, and I'm really excited to showcase and talk about their work with you.
This one's
that
interesting.
is interesting. Yeah.
Doesn't
What
quite
could be fun?
match.
Yeah, I was gonna say that what could be fun is if it gave us the illusion that it almost goes into the other grid. I don't know, other square.
Yeah. That's kind of the tricky part, because if you make what the left edge is really different from the right edge. So if the right and left, it's almost like a video transition, right?
Yeah.
If the ending point and the starting point of the next are similar, that's gonna work. But otherwise, it can get a little bit more noticeable. So that this might not end up doing that really cool like seamlessness. But if I make it into a different shape, it might give me a different result. Oh, I have the background. I'm going to remove the background for now.
Yeah. I think it's much easier for our non-destructive kind of approach that we have here.
I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely ends up being like a post method. Well, 5x5 is fine.
Yeah, and then you can just change colors. You don't need to go into the pattern over and over again to change the color.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because honestly, creating something like this can start with a simple shape. Like we've created a lot of these graphic elements, and just like that, you've created something really interesting, and you can sort of develop that a little bit more as you go along. I'm going to save this one. Do we have a name for this one?
We do not have a name. Chad, if you have any names for us for the patterns, that would be really, really good.
That'd be really nice.
Yeah.
Lines. Just named it.
Lines? Okay. Yeah.
I know. I swear I'm in the creative industry.
No, we talked about copywriting. I mean, not everyone has to be a copywriter, and it's totally fine to call it lines. They are lines after all.
Yeah. Lines 1, lines 2, lines final, lines final 2.
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about naming, I know we haven't saved yet. Do you think we should save now?
Yeah. It's about
Maybe
that time.
let's save. Okay. Yeah. 1 hour into it, it's save time. Yeah. If you're watching and lurking as well, lurkers, it's time to save your work. Get some water and stretch.
That was a test if you caught it. Did
Exactly.
you catch it, Annika? Or someone in the chat?
Absolutely. So do you send off your files? What do you think about naming? Do you send off your files do you collaborate often with people and designers? How does that work?
Oh yeah, like naming my files always it's almost like I would say like a copyright signature. I always include my name first, the name of the person I'm working with, the purpose, whether it's the project name or campaign name, and I involve the version and the date, and that's it. Right.
Okay.
And actually I put, and so that starts to change along the way, and we're all able to find it. And then within my folder systems, it works the same way. Right. So it's me first, then it's my client, then it's the campaigns or projects or whatnot. And it just makes things so much better. It's so crazy how those systems could take so long for us to figure out. But if one of the best compliments I've gotten at different design studios that I've worked at is how organized I can keep my items. This is probably not a fair example of that. My library is not a fair example of that. But when you work for other companies, it's more important to be able to save everything or have an organization system, because other designers work on your items too. So having that kind of cooperative process is helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that all of us have different processes to even name our files, and that is so fascinating to me.
Yeah. How do you do yours?
I do something similar, but I do not include my name, which in retrospect I should. But that's only because, I mean, just for the files that I'm sending off of, because it's essentially the client's file. If it's like a logo file, I include what format there is and just the project name or a brand name.
Yeah, or a brand name. Yeah, but definitely include your name. I think that's gonna be.
I mean, that's just there, like
just there.
But that's a good suggestion. I think I should do that. Yeah. What do you think about like copyright issues? Do you typically, when you send off files, since you're talking about that, do you include something like that in your contract that, hey, do you need original files? How does that work?
Wait, give me a second.
Yep, no worries. We have Rose in the chat mentioning that she has managed to transfer some patterns in Adobe Capture, and it's wonderful. Yeah, I feel like Adobe Capture is a very powerful tool, and it's like something that you can use on the go at all times. And it's brilliant that you can use that and use it with other Adobe Suite applications as well. So I feel it's very,
totally.
very, yeah.
Yeah,
what are we doing
now? Random. I like using the the scale property, or just to be able to transform each item, because it can get cumbersome to do it like this and not remember what the shortcuts are to be able to do it, change things up and modify your pattern or modify the bounding box of your pattern. So going right clicking, transform, you can go into this and just press one of these. I press scale. And then that lets me preview what I'm changing. So I'm currently just making it a little bit bigger. So did 120 uniform. And sometimes you can't see it. I click preview again, and that just lets me see that. I can also just like scale the corners, right? And things like that. So it gives me kind of like a little bit more power to do something without feeling like it's cumbersome. Did I do it? Did I do it without kind of morphing it or changing up the scale? Or if you want to be specific, somebody wants to ask you to change it, 10%, a client wants to ask you that, then you can definitely do that.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. You can do the same thing with all of these different things. So you can also transform other elements. And then in this...
Oh, that is fun. Okay.
Yeah. In this one...
Now we're talking.
Yeah. So instead of changing the bounding box, you can also change the inside artwork. So you don't have to worry about going in there wondering like, wait, why doesn't it work? Because when you do double click this, it doesn't actually let you do that exactly. So it feels a little bit different from the workflow you're used to. So being able to go in there and doing that helps mitigate that iteissue.
Very cool.
So I think I'm gonna bring this one into Photoshop and play around so I can introduce you to this a little bit before we jump into our portfolio review. Yeah. And so I've picked a few things here, and I want to show you an interesting resource. So I've been using Adobe Stock quite a bit in the past. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of really cool things available within the free category that it can already kind of help you get started in case like you want to find something. I got this guy here, and it isn't going to be as say specific if you're looking for a criteria of interior design that maybe your client is more into. It's part of your mood board, so to speak. That might be something that maybe you want to invest in Adobe Stock for. But it's really cool to, as an artist or as an independent artist, if you want to showcase your work, you have that opportunity. Like, just go in here and show you. So for example, to showcase some of these prints, I've downloaded different images so that I can kind of showcase them in an environment that's not me actually. So it was an actual mocked up photo, and that saves me some time to be able to showcase some of this work in an interior space.
Yeah, and I think it contributes to like making it like you mentioned that I was saying that it looks like light fixtures. It kind of contributes to you trying to imagine how it would look in your space. And that contributes to the whole shopping experience as well.
Yeah, right. So it helps convert that shopping experience into, okay, I can kind of see how it would look in my space. And sometimes, like this interior design can vary from something like this. And so it's helpful to have at times the subscriptions to be a bit more specific, but whenever you just want to try things for yourself and collect a nice library of mockups that can help you even showcase your work for an employer, that could be another purpose. Adobe Stock has been really handy for things like that, and it has all these really cool filter systems in case you want to be very specific down to the megapixels.
Absolutely. Oh, I did not know that was an option there.
Yeah. So I did download a few of these here, which I think we can start to play with. I want to try this pillow because I totally like Talked about it so much yesterday. I was like, we're going to put it on a pillow. Wow. So let's see. So within Photoshop, now we're in Photoshop. Within Photoshop, I like to kind of keep some of these items at first as a rasterized image. So they come in as a kind of a vector image whenever I place them in. I like to place as embedded, so I don't have to go looking for a link, right? Depends on you. But when it's embedded, it becomes a vector shape, which is that little guy, like a smart object, that little guy there, so that you can modify it should you want to select it independently and modify like the color or something, which sometimes that's helpful. Hey, I actually wanted to make it brighter, or black and white. Oh, that's kind of much, but yeah. So that would save automatically, and that's the power of just having all these images linked. So making that decision to rasterize it can be an actual specific decision, because it's not as much of a workable file. But I'm doing that because I want to use the properties panel. And the properties panel, I have a few options here that pop up in the quick actions. And it lets me remove a background or select a subject. And it also has all sorts of other really neat, helpful features that can be just quickly done. For example, you want to blur the background if you want to kind of create that nice bokeh effect on some really cool light fixtures or something like that. Could be neat. Selecting the subject, smoothing out skin. So these things that we tend to do as artists, maybe quite frequently in our workflow, Adobe has decided to put them as like quick, easy fixes, so that we can have them accessible to us and utilize them as we like it.
I love that. Yeah, I love the Discover panel that has been added to all the applications. I feel like that makes your workflow much smoother as well.
Yeah.
We were talking about shortcuts yesterday. I feel like that is handy for us as well, because I know for like Apple users, there was the search option where you could look for things that, like, let's say I don't know where the blend effect is in Illustrator. I could just search if I'm using the application on a Mac, but this was previously not available on Windows machine user, and now it is. So I think that's really, really exciting. Yeah.
That's interesting. You have to take that into account too, the different operating systems. So I'm going to select subject with this one. It has a little kitty there as an option. So it tells me what I'm currently selecting the layer on to make sure that like you're doing it on the right one. I do have a few layers up on this one. And so it did a really fairly good job at selecting this particular subject, even though we have a background that is wood. It did select the pillow quite well. I do have a bit of a snippet here from the plans. Maybe we don't want that. There are two. We did ask it to select subjects, and we do have two subjects. So interestingly enough, sometimes you do want that, but I think at this opportunity, it chose the most predominant one. So I'm just going to I'm just going to unselect that by grabbing the marquee tool. And holding Alt so that it's a little minus pops up, and we can get rid of that. And that was easy enough. That's already.
Did you say you were using Alt on the keyboard for subtracting it?
Yeah, Alt or Option.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Just making sure.
Yeah. So that will kind of help you. So it's nice to navigate between like adding a selection, subtracting a selection, and the same thing will apply when we select our masks tool. So what we're going to do here after this is we're going to select the mask. And if I hold that Alt or Option, it will actually subtract that mask. So anything that's black will hide. Anything that's white will reveal. And that's pretty much how that works. And you can always brush in any extra elements that you want to be included with white, right? And I just held that Alt or Option key is pretty handy, because I just selected that little thumbnail of my my mask, and that showed me selection that I made. And I did it again. And here you go. We're back to our artwork. Now, if that's not exactly what I wanted to do, then I can also not hold Alt.
Yeah.
Let's go back, not hold Alt, and then it will remove the remaining, the outside area. So it'll be reversed, right?
Yeah.
So I do want to do that. I want to make a duplicate in this case.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to put them into a group. And so this is my pillow. So I noticed that I do a kind of like a workflow where it's like things are sandwiched with different attributes, right? So right now we have the pillow, and in this one, I'm going to just keep my background. So I'm going to delete that layer mask.
Okay.
And then in the top one, that pillow has a bit of color to it. It's kind of like on the warm end, you can see there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually create, go into this one and make it grayscale. And I actually don't think, let's see, grayscale, going directly here. I usually just hit, here you go, black and white. I also usually just hit the shortcuts.
Yep.
But you can just do that, right?
Yeah.
And then this gives you like a lot of different versions of black that you can try. And you can't really tell that it's black and white because we just did it on the pillow. But the reason why I'm doing that is to be able to showcase or highlight more of the shadows so that we can borrow them to make the imposing of the patterns more realistic. What was your question?
That was my question. Is there a particular reason why you're doing that? Yeah.
Yeah. So then that no longer has that kind of warmth color to it. And I get to do that. So let's bring in that really neat element. I'm just going to copy it here, although I can definitely borrow these elements from the library and just bring them in the same fashion. I like being able to have them as a vector. And so I'm going to just paste it here. And I guess either way, this is kind of just how I go about it.
Very cool.
Let's see. I think I changed the sizing there. I'm going to hold shift. Cool. And now we have our pattern. Turn.
Of course. Let's do it.
And then what I'm going to do here is begin to change some of the modes to try to see what would work best for this particular image. I noticed that anything that relies on like something, I think on the white, ends up being in this little section, I don't know if you've noticed before, but they're actually kind of compartmentalized here. There's a little divider. And so that's going to give you a sense of, okay, this is reacting to black, this is reacting to white, and this is kind of like a mixture of them. And that's kind of how I've begun to understand it. I am going to add the mask to this pattern so that we don't have that extra layer, right? And it's as easy as just either holding this thumbnail of our vector mask. Yes, I kind of blanked there for a second. Vector mask and dragging it over, right? Could be that simple. Or you can click Command, and that makes that selection again, right? And then I just add it, and that can, whichever way might be helpful for you. But just knowing that you can create that selection again that you did earlier, that's pretty cool, especially if you've done it with like painstaking pen tool action.
Absolutely.
It's like, wow, I lost it, I didn't save it in my path. It's definitely easy to just be able to select if you do have a mask there already available.
Love that. I think it's already coming together. Did we change the blend mode for this at all?
No, we haven't changed change the, yeah, I think I'm going to do here, but let's see. I have to place this pattern below our, what I would call our texture layer.
That's interesting.
Right. Yeah. So that's going to act as our texture. And we're going to do the same thing for this one, kind of change up that mode to something a bit, the blend mode as to something a bit more natural. Let's see which one kind of ends up working for this. It's kind of like a nice examination of like, what are the light conditions of this photo and which one might be a little bit closer to it. I think it was up here. Usually multiply, overlay, soft lights tend to be really good like go-tos for something like this, and just lowering opacities and trying to just sort of see where it lands a little bit closer. I'm going to actually unlink this image from the vector and start to reshape this to see what else comes out of this. Do I want them to be bigger, smaller, and just have all these opportunities to create your design a little bit more specific to your liking?
Yeah, Val in the chat says, I don't think I've ever gone so in depth with a mockup in this way. Yeah, I agree. I think I've never used the actual mask layer as like a texture layer. I always just change the art layer to a multiply layer on top. If I'm using lighter colors, I think the multiply really works well with like the pillow layer or the texture layer beneath it, but it's fine. Yeah. Tiffany says, so converting to black and white on the pillow will help the blend because it uses the blacks and whites in the masked item. Is that right? Is that why we changed it to grayscale?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. It's great that you understand that, because like it's one of those things that an environment tends to leak some like blue light or some warmer light, and maybe that kind of works in your favor. But if it starts to tamper with the color palettes of the pattern that you're showcasing, that might not actually work. And it might interact in a funky way, especially with the color modes. So I would just kind of keep that in mind. And let's see what it would look like with a different one, just to check out different options here.
Ooh, I think I really love this.
I know, I think me too. Yeah. We're just such fans of this one. and like before, it's just like a matter of making sure that pattern is sandwiched between the original image and that texture image. Okay. So we can play with it.
Very cool. I think this would look great in all orientations as well.
Yeah. And like before, I'm just going to drag that pattern to be able to close out that shape. And if I did want to include a color background on this one, I can definitely just bring in a simple square and just, or circle, whatever works on this end. Let's see, properties. I don't think I need that here. Just change the color.
Yeah.
All my little things are popping up in my second screen.
Yeah, that always happens. And then like, where is this pop-up box? Why can't I click into Photoshop? What's wrong?
Yeah. Wait, where did it go?
I totally understand that. So is this like the background layer that we're going to use? Are we also going to mask this one as well?
Yeah, I'm going to mask this one. Let's do... Oh, removed it from the other one. So hold that Alt. And you can always like try different colors or pick from one of your color palettes and see what might end up working in your favor. I think a little bit of like yellow could look cool. But that's interesting to be able to see a basic shape behind it. And without that pattern, it doesn't really, I mean, it's just this, right? It doesn't look as realistic as having those different shadows involved in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the texture really does play a huge role in making it look realistic as well.
Right. Yeah, so I really like this one and this pillow. I think I'm gonna use in honor of just being able to make your artwork a beautiful wall art. I think I'm gonna place one of our favorites, this guy here.
I'm trying to think which one it is, but because I love them all. So
you're just like me. I don't have a favorite color.
Yeah. I love them all. Gotta catch them all. Yeah,
Gotta
I
catch
love
them
this.
all.
Love the center one though. Yeah, I do love this one. So you're gonna create a pattern out of this wall art or just have one single? Like
I think I'm just gonna do the
standalone?
single one just to kind of showcase the way we embedded into this one. This is a simple one. This one doesn't require too much, but just in the spirit of getting you inspired to begin to mock up some of your artwork into real world spaces. I feel like, I don't know why that took me so long to do, knowing that I have that available to me. And it just translates a different type of feel that you can't really do with just exporting a vector PDF or, showcasing it in your website alone. Just kind of standing in the kind of space of pixels. It helps to be able to mock it up and give that person that opportunity to feel what it might look like. And so I would do the same thing for this one and try to involve there's a little bit of shadows that happen here on the right-hand side, right? And a little bit of highlights that happen on the left-hand side. So I can sandwich this one in too for a frame and create a texture layer, which we know we're going to make into black and white.
Very cool. Yeah, Tiffany also agrees they're all my favorites, and Carol says that was my favorite. Yeah. Love it.
That is your favorite? Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you have a favorite. You're much better than us at selecting favorites.
Absolutely. Yeah. Always spoiled for choice. Oh, so are we still doing the grayscale technique in this one as well?
Yeah, so that we can keep that texture. And in reality, we don't need to. This is one of the best, actually, this is one of the most difficult selections you'll ever encounter. You just do this and it works out. We just need to borrow this really cool highlight on the border of the edges so that it starts to look a bit more realistic. So that was simple enough. I didn't need to overcomplicate it. But again, we're just using that masking tool, which kind of gives us a freedom of moving things around should we want to still modify elements. But this layer is specifically meant to act as a texture layer should we need it. So we have a multiply here, maybe something like soft light. Might
That'd
start
cool.
to it looks a little bit less like black is a pretty stark color on this one. So I might be able to lower that a little bit and try to kind of pretend like there's some lighting. Now, if there's also kind of the possibility of you rendering your own artificial light and just use a bit of a brush action here with a white color. Maybe if there's a warmer light color happening in the room, you can use something like a taupe. And doing that, I think the highlight was on this side, right? The highlight, so we definitely want that brush to be on the softer end. So we'll lower that completely and make it fairly big, right? And then just add that mask to it so that it's kind of I think it's going to be this mask.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. That's a good
so
technique.
that we start to just play with the ambience and make it feel, I guess the goal is that it looks as realistic as you can. There's going to be some images that really give you, when you're allocating time to source those images and spaces like Adobe Stock or the web, definitely look out for elements like, does it have the potential for texture? Like, does this wall have enough variation where it's not a blank wall, but rather it kind of starts to change, where the highlights, it goes from light to a little bit darker, and I can include that, I can involve that as texture to my wall so that it doesn't look like superimposed and sort of false. That little element of texture really takes you a little bit further. So I think I could actually do this one next. Let's do a wallpaper. Let's see which pattern we had here. You said this one would be a great wallpaper, right? Was this
Oh
one?
yeah. I forgot about that with all the pillows.
Yeah. This one's kind of pillowy also.
I also love how it has like a 3D effect, so it kind of makes it look like it's coming at you, so that would look great on a pillow. And I love that with all of these patterns that you've made here, it all seems like they would make for. So since we're talking pillows, they would. I know we just align them anywhere if they're on a couch, and these would look in good in every orientation. So if it's like upside down or a different
Right.
orientation, these would all still look great. I think that's a very important point here to think
Right.
of
I think
when
so
creating
too.
patterns. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you were, I mean, depends on kind of the asset that you made. Like we said before, being able to have those two ends match could be tricky. It's a bit more complex pattern making.
Yeah.
But definitely can be easy enough with some of the more like symmetrical shapes.
Yeah.
So let's see if this one can give us the handy act of like selecting the background. It's a little bit like kind of like blown out back here. So I don't know if it's just gonna bleed out. I'm not sure. But let's see how it does. I have remove background. This is a simple sort of mid-century environment. Yeah, that wasn't that bad. It took a few bites of my computer over here.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of the legs. And these are kind of moments that you can go in here and sort of help the sensei kind of understand these little elements that you were trying to select. But like I said earlier, I could tell something like that would happen because some areas were blown out already, so it can be confused for the wall, and it's just a little bit of highlights that happen here. But what's good is that we have a really a workable file here. We have a mask that we can go in here and still modify, right? So that is not a final selection. We can still go in here and modify it. And so I said earlier, the black hides and the white reveals. So I'm going to make sure that my foreground has a white color selected. And I'm just going to increase that hardness to 100 so that my edges are sharp.
Very cool. Yeah.
And select that mask so that I'm not painting on the frame because that would just look weird. So I'm going to just zoom in here.
So are we doing this just because you want to insert something like the pattern behind these objects in the image?
Yeah, I'm gonna include it into the wall. So in reality, I will reverse that mask. But yeah, good question. Because right now we ended up selecting the subject because we remove the background, which is kind of one and the same. And that could be a great way to just like find yourself, like you might want to select the subject because you want the background. And so you in the past have placed the subjects independently, and that has helped.
Very cool. Yeah, we have Becca and Daniel and Matthew, all of us joining the stream today. Hey, welcome on in, everyone who's
Welcome.
just joining us. We're almost at the 90-minute mark. Actually, we're at the 80-minute mark. So in 10 minutes, we have a very exciting artist spotlight.
Nice.
Yeah.
What is time?
What is time? Yeah.
And then we have a little bit of the legs here that also got brushed out. I actually have a couch similar to this. And I really like the legs, the mid-century classic.
Perfect for the pillow cover that you're gonna have then.
Yeah.
The
My
space
couch
inspired. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, maybe I can convince my wife to print it.
Absolutely. The next time you're here, we're going to see the pillow in the background somewhere. Yeah.
It was the funniest. We had the funniest debate about that. We had to buy pillows for it. And I was like, why aren't you buying pillows from an artist? Like, well, we have to support them. It's like, oh, I just want like a blank pillow. And I'm like, no. Can we try something cool? Yeah. We don't have that many pillows right now. The debate was not resolved.
Love that.
So in this case, I kind of helped it a little bit. So we did lose our background. So we want to create a sort of reverse selection. We can subtract mask from selection, I believe. And this one, is it that? I don't remember. I'm going to do it my usual way because I'm pretty sure there is another way.
There's always 5 different ways to do the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't worry about that. I think even if you feel like, I mean, just not you, but in general, you watching you. But if in general you feel like your workflow is much longer than what could be the more efficient one, it's not the case because you've been doing this for a long time and you just made yourself more efficient doing the longer workflow. If you think it's longer, I mean, it's not necessarily the longer workflow.
I do think it's longer. I think mine's is like one more step than it should be. But okay, I'm just gonna select it, right? Command select that that mask. And then I'm just gonna delete it and instead apply the holding Alt or Option, apply the inverse of that. Right? So that I can have that option. Or actually, like I said earlier, we can also just select the subjects and place them in the foreground. So we have those subjects independently. So when we add that wall, that artwork, we could just keep that in the foreground.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go that way. Yeah. There's so many ways of doing this. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So let's see this really funky wall. Smart object. You can start to place. Maybe I should have downloaded like an arcade or something like that. They would love this wall art.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love that the pillow in the foreground matches like the tones for the wallpaper as well. You really thought this through.
The pillows. No, I don't think I thought that one through, but thanks for the credit. I will
Happy
take
accidents. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll just edit out the part where I admitted that I didn't know.
Yep.
No, we can't do that. It's a live stream.
Nobody knows. So are we also changing the blend mode in this one?
Yes. So always blend modes are definitely your friend. You can already see, since the image is not actually taken up to the top, you can already see what a difference it makes between that top and that bottom. It starts to change actually I have to go a little higher, I think. There you go. So I'm just going to edit that out of, the other way. There you go.
Yeah.
So that becomes part of my wall. And much like we did before, I think I'm going to create that black and white image. So I have a sandwiched pattern. And you can start to see that something like this can become a really useful workflow so that so that you can do something like this fairly simply with the help of like the properties panel, but also by like putting a little bit of TLC and making sure the selections are good. And then just having this really like 3-step way of creating something that looks a bit more natural. So I'm going to add the texture here.
I think the adding in light part is something that most people kind of miss. And that's why it kind of looks like unrealistic and you can see those hard edges. But I feel like this is a great pro tip right here. That adding in. Do
Yeah.
you think your photography background contributes to you thinking of like design this way?
Yes, absolutely. I think so, actually. In the past, I had to design a mock-up for a bottle, and that I didn't have the resources I have now to be able to develop like a 3D render in Dimension or something of the likes. So I would just grab a picture and then involve the artwork on top of it so that people who are going to produce this bottle can have a clear idea of what the positioning was and things like that. Especially when the production was overseas. So like a lot of language barriers. So one of the most beautiful things I always say is like visual language is one of our common languages. So being able to create mockups like this involved a lot of highlighting and just so that they look good. I also, I had a great client, wonderful client. And so they had a high standard and I wanted them to feel like everything that was outputted during their brand effort was really, really nice. So I definitely did a lot of mockups on that front. And so you can use it for interior design. You can use it to mock up products. Could be a different way of doing that.
I love that. Yeah, Tiffany and Val both are loving the wallpaper design. And Tiffany says, I'm ready to add it to my cart. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's your sign to put it on your shop. Indeed.
Yeah, so I can go crazy sometimes in there. I'm like, oh wow, this mock-up is so beautiful. And that's another medium of income, I think. If you really think we've been talking or touching on some points here of just having access to creating your graphics into patterns to provide real life products, but also selling your mock-ups is an outlet, right? We all love that, and being able to create a process like this so that others can use it and others can use your file can be also really helpful. I found that in the past has really been helpful. I have this in black and white. Let's put our color so
I was
fun in the
thinking about
foreground.
that. Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what happened to my color?
Where's the color? Yeah, I love it.
Yes, objects in the foreground. The objects didn't require a color mode, but yeah, we can still unlink that and create and have that pattern scale in different sizes.
Yeah.
In this case, I think I have to scale up because I created a mask upwards.
Whoa, that's very big. Do you think that you would change orientations in Photoshop when you're doing something like this? Maybe you create a pattern and then you bring it to a mockup and you don't like it. Would you go back to Illustrator or would you do the changes over here in Photoshop like you are now?
I think that making a it depends. It's sort of like a choice on like whether this pattern is going to become part of other elements. Then you might still want to have like one true swatch that you can always count on, especially if you're translating the swatch over to somebody who's going to produce it, or like your production team, or someone who is also a fellow designer that needs to make maybe a different object. We need to kind of have that option to have like a swatch you can count on. So if I make this trivial decision of flipping it upside down here, that might not reflect on the swatch, right? Yeah. So that's a good question, because it's interesting how those things are more technical, more on the workflow of the actual work environment, as opposed to the workflow within here, right? Yeah. I don't know where this is coming from, but this is like a little guy here. There it is.
Found it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just delete it. I'm gonna ignore it for now. I'm
That's all good.
nitpicking
Yeah. Yeah.
on a live stream. I don't know why.
It's all good.
But
It's the
yeah.
perfectionist in you. I love that. Have we done 3 until now? Have we done the frame?
So we did this pillow here, which is really, really cool. And then we've done this one's really nice actually. I might actually print it. Or I might print this one here. I actually have access to printing because I have a printer. I love my printer. It's beautiful. And it helps me create these really amazing fine art prints that I'm just like, wow. Sometimes I have to stop myself and be like, okay, can't waste all your ink. But yeah, this one, this one's really nice. I really like the replica of this shape. And then we also made the wallpaper. And I think up next, after our review, I'd like to help you see how an image like this could be selected. And you probably have some hints of it. It's interesting to see images that involve little plants like this. Oops.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Little plants like this, because sometimes plants could be just like so cumbersome, because I mean, this one's not the one. There's definitely some that are, you have those pampas, I don't know what they're called, but they're just very complex. It starts to look a little bit like selecting hair or something like that. So having plants can involve a little bit more painstaking selections. But if you notice, we haven't had to use the pen tool to do this. Which the pen tool can sometimes be, your best friend in other areas.
Can be cumbersome.
And sometimes it's just like painstaking dot. And it still does like a really great job. And that's kind of why you choose to do that at the end anyhow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it is that time now. We are at the Artist Spotlight tab and the mark. Don't forget to submit your recommendations for creators to highlight for our next Artist Spotlight. But today we have someone really special here. Can we look at their profile and look at some of their work, highlight what they do and who they are?
Yeah, so we have Santiago González, a graphic designer from Bogota, Colombia, and a fellow follower of my live stream on Behance. And we wanted to showcase his work. I found it to be really interesting to see like so many really like different elements, different dynamic elements. So which one do you want to dive into?
I think I'm really attracted to the 3D. The X at the top really reminds me of 36 Days of Type. So I really want to look at that.
Oh, yeah. Have you participated in that?
I have. Yeah. I've never done it in 3D, but I think this is super fun. I love all the colors and how they're so dynamic, and yet they convey that it's actually an alphabet.
Yeah.
I also like the reflection on the sphere.
I was going to say the reflection I'm staring at, like is it in a room?
It does seem to be. Yeah.
That's really trippy. Really cool though.
Yeah. And this spiral element in the foreground as well. Like the choices made here are very fun, and like the colors all work together. You would not think that these would work together, but they actually do.
Right. Very we talked a lot about color palettes, and this is a really unique one. Definitely has that common thread of just selecting something cool and then something warm. I like that. Some really neat angles here.
Yeah, and even the scene setup for like the compositions and the camera angles in this case is also very fun. Very zoomed in shots to show the details. I think all of that is really good.
Yeah, so it looks like they use, it doesn't say what they use. Let me see.
Yeah, it doesn't say. I think it's could be a combination. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to tag it so you can get featured, I think, on Behance. They do some really neat features. I'm really curious about this eye.
Let's look at it. Yeah. Oh, there's a video.
Ooh. Can I play it? Ooh. Yeah,
that is
I think
crazy. I think it's so realistic. I love that there's a video to showcase like the whole thing. It almost looks like you're in a big room with like a lot of ventilator, like those
Yeah,
window things at the top. I don't know how to
it's a good
explain it.
idea. I wonder if that image came afterwards, or is it an
Yeah,
effect, or is it an image that was just imposed on top? Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I think the colors
I
look also very fun.
the yellow. No, I
Yeah,
actually felt like the yellow was a bit frantic in the eye. So
yeah,
the caution sign yellow.
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting. You thought it was fun.
I think it looks very, very attractive in the sense that it's bold and it makes you want to look at the design.
Yeah.
Because it
This
matches the color of the eye. Yeah,
Let's
I
see.
love
Let's
it.
look at one of these sort of design brand
Yeah,
identities, it looks like.
yeah.
So we
Oh,
have urban roots. Ooh, with different variations. Well, I like this more drawn one. It's kind of cool.
mm-hmm. Oh, I
We
love
were talking,
this that this looks like
yeah.
a responsive, it's a very responsive logo because it has like a logo mark at the top and then there's text and then there's variations as well for usage on multiple, like it could be an ad campaign, it could be a flyer, it could be social
Mm,
media, it could be a
yeah.
watermark. I love responsive logos and I feel like this really fits in. And this could be like a festival. So if it's like a Latin jazz, it could be
Ooh.
on a festival poster or something.
I
Yeah.
think my favorite one's this one. It definitely
Yeah.
feels like it has a lot of motion because everything is
Hmm.
like angular lines.
Yeah.
And yeah, it gives that energy of a Latin jazz.
I agree with that. Yeah. I think the motion and the dynamicism in the bottom two ones, I think either of those could work really well for the jazz brand. Yeah.
Nice. Let's check out another one here.
Val in the chat says the eyes are great. This is the one that caught my eye the most. No pun intended. Oh, the studio looks really fun. What is that?
Wait.
That is a very 3D, 2D
Oh,
looking
yes.
E. That kind
Oh,
of
I
reminds
like.
me of a Paul Trani stream from last week, actually. He was doing something very, very fun with alphabets and shapes.
It's supposed to be a DNA inspired um,
Hmm.
architecture for interiors. Really cool. And I love when they showcase any process. I think that's always
Hmm.
really valuable to just kind of follow your train of thought and being able to approach a design brief.
Yeah. I love that they
Ooh,
have also showed the whole. I actually agree that you can see part of the process and that gives you an insight into your thought process, what you really did when you were first designing it. And it's so great to include stuff like that in your portfolio because then as a client, I know what you were thinking at the very moment when you were designing things. So using
yeah,
the I mean, I as a client and I don't know anything about design or I don't know how something's constructed, this is a great insight into seeing that you use an isometric grid for something like this
right.
and it's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great for designers and employers alike because then
Yeah.
they understand that you understand these systems
Hmm.
and the result's kind of cool. That's why
Yeah. It does
I
read
love the
as an E.
simplicity. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's simple and complex at the same time, which is very fun.
Ooh, look at this. Ooh, patterns.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Let's do it. Oh, I love how the negative space is working with this one because it's just so good to emphasize the brand language overall. I think patterns work really well for doing that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
like the more linear patterns
Hmm.
too. So it's not as heavy like
Yeah.
visually, but then you
Yeah.
have these like two options if you wanted your brand to stay dynamic. And then of
Absolutely.
course involve some photography. And it's really nice to see it involved in something like this with the
Hmm.
graphic pattern on top of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued that, you know, you go from one direction. We talked about how we're all like have hyphens almost,
Yeah.
and the different things that we do.
Yeah.
I love how you have something so 3D and then you have something that's a bit exploring 3D, but
Hmm.
in a more minimalistic way, I guess. It's really
Absolutely.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that the domains that they're working with is really diverse and vast. And in this day and age, I think that's it's a very good thing to have in your portfolio. I love this as
Yeah.
well. This has like neon colors and it's also called neon. So I think the very at the very top, they showed like the two variations, and then there was black and white, and now there's mockups as well. I think that really emphasizes the whole package here, that hey, I
Oh,
designed a logo for you, but
here.
this is,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, this is how it's going to
Yeah.
look in all usages. I think this is really well done as well.
And also showcasing your process or showcasing the different variations of your logo on Behance are the type of things that kind of help your work be showcased more often or be viewed more often. Because,
Yeah,
I think oftentimes we just want to showcase maybe the final work, right? But being able to show that process is really interesting, and looks really neat once you put it together.
absolutely. Yeah. Why don't you all go ahead and give Santiago a follow? There is, I think Val is going to share their link in chat if you're watching this both on Behance and YouTube. And if you're watching this on replay or if you're watching this on live, don't forget to put in your recommendations for creators to highlight for our next artist spotlight. Um, and yeah, did I say follow them? Yeah, go ahead and follow them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Val, for putting that link in there. They have an amazing variety of work, and I love to be able to share fellow creators' work in here. I think that's really special that we can look at your work and look at what all good stuff that you do. So make sure to
Yeah,
put in stuff on your Behance portfolio or even your website. I think that also works. But
definitely.
this is a nice little segue into what we're also doing, because this also
Mhm.
had some patterns. So why don't we go back to what we were doing earlier and look at mockups?
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. We have about 15 more minutes left in the stream. So if you have any last minute
Oh,
questions for
it
Cyn
flew by.
here, it did. Yeah. We have been having a lot of fun. So I think it's okay if it flew by.
I think I'm going to create this one into the poster mockup really quick. I'm so
Mhm.
curious to see what it looks like, and then we can jump into this color one.
Love it. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see work. I'm really inspired to kind of put up my work on Behance now more often, I notice.
Mhm.
In the past, it had been a bit of like an afterthought, like, do I need to put it up there? But,
Yeah.
especially if you have a website, you kind of think maybe I don't have to do it. But
Yeah.
it's such a pleasure to see the entire process once you've completed a project and see it come together. I think that's like
Absolutely.
one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really I think I agree about the fact that if you have a website, you would think that why would I need it? But you would be surprised how many clients look at your portfolio on Behance. And also, there are so many employers on Behance as well. From the job section, they immediately get redirected to your profile. And I think that's really handy to have it up to date.
Yeah, I definitely have had some really nice client acquisitions there. And I think that the caliber of work
Yeah.
that they expect is definitely similar to what they see on Behance, which is great because then you don't have to worry about having someone who maybe has lower standards, like maybe they don't want the cool design you created. You're likely to
Mhm.
have a really great relationship with
Yeah.
folks who are very curious about the same kind of work.
Yeah, I think
Ooh,
overall it just gives like a very nice insight into who you are, and what you do on a daily basis.
this kind of matches with the flowers at the bottom there. This fits a little bit more with the
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
So I'm just
Did
going to
we
put
add
it.
texture to this? Did we use the same grayscale technique in this one as well?
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
same one that we had before. I'm just going to replace the artwork and leave
Mm-hmm.
all the other remaining parts so
Okay.
that I can have another option. So I'm just going to put this into the artwork folder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that way I can differentiate which is which. And this is the light, actually, I think. Yeah. Rendering light.
I remember it now. Oh, the reflected light on the left. Yeah. Nice.
Cool. So I definitely have to change the dimension there. Just add that mask on top of it. And that way it fits inside of it.
Yeah.
That looks a lot better. And this is probably going to have to change that. This mode doesn't look as good on this one. So I'm probably going to kind of go through this here and see which one. It's interesting how it can change the color altogether. Look at this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Or black and white. That could be a cool option for a client to see. Nice. So now there, I have another mock-up for me to be able to showcase on my website.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was easy, right? Like I already had created my setup on a folder, and I can bring it in here and make it look really neat in this environment, and then animate it later and make those lights glow, I guess.
Yeah.
Or something fun like that.
I love that you already had that mockup handy. So do you ever save these mockups for future use, or do you always create them from scratch every time you're doing it? Is it like customizable for later use? Do you save these somewhere? Or do you just always create something that is specific to the project you're working on?
Actually, it's really nice to have like a good assortment to be able to kind of rotate so that you do have a few examples. And then when this one comes along again, it won't look as familiar. So you could still kind of ride that edge of like, is it mocked up or is it real? And ultimately, if you can't accomplish that feeling that a shopper might have to be like, wow, that looks really cool in that environment, or they're just so distracted because it just looks like a mock-up, then it won't be the same effect.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I think it's always handy to have a selection of assets that you can use in the future, be it like in your libraries or even with mockups. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So I think for this one, I'm going to be doing a select with color range. And so this has this really bright yellow, and already like I can begin to select it here with this eyedropper tool. And the eyedropper tool gives me a plus, a minus. So if I don't want certain areas selected, you can start to see it here reflected. It also gives me the option to see the image, but I think the selection kind of helps us be a bit more specific on where I want things to go. And so I'm going to go and like select all these different variations, because you can tell there's kind of like a shadow yellow here. There's kind of a highlighted yellow at the very top. And so that starts to collect all those different samples.
I love that you used this image, because people in the chat are saying that I don't know if I could sleep with that color in the room. But I feel like this is such a great way, like using the color range and selecting the colors that you don't need and like mask that out is such a great way, because you have such a great contrast between the furniture and the background there, that it's a very good way to demonstrate that. Yeah.
So if we remember black hides and white reveals, so I actually can directly choose to invert this here. So if white reveals, when we press OK, all it's going to show us is the wall, right? If black hides and white reveals, in this case, by inverting it, we are going to remain with the white areas, which is the bed and the plants and all the different parts of it. So I'm going to invert it and I'm going to press OK. Right. And that has selected that area. And when I click on that mask, and so that has removed it. And you can see here, there's like a little bit of like little sections there that you can still detect, and a little bit of yellow here that you can still detect. And so you can always revisit that color range and add some more if you want to. You can see how it looks in the mask version. And you can see how these areas are a little bit lighter gray, right? So you can also do a bit of a contrast. So you can actually make that black a little bit darker. And so if it's slightly gray, it's like creating an opacity. So whatever's white, that image is going to seep through it. So just by creating it extra darker, extra black, it's going to then hide that area. So it's another kind of quick way to, now you don't see, you can still see these edges, right? I didn't tackle that, but you couldn't see that thread of yellow that was on the back.
Very cool tip. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think on this one, I'm going to add one of these really cool shapes. I don't think we made a pattern of that one. I'm trying to remember which one we made a pattern of. Let's see. Oh, it was this one here. Ooh.
Ooh, did we just change the color for that? No, what did you do? Missed it.
No, I selected a different pattern from one of our swatches.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this one doesn't have a background. That's probably why you don't recognize it. And it was
I think
originally this one.
Yeah, the lines.
Yeah.
Lines too.
I mean, we could select like something like this and just expand it too. It doesn't have to be a direct pattern to go on the back. That could be kind of gigantic.
I think this could look fun.
That bounding box. Usually you have the image like just edge to edge, but
it's all good.
I made these.
I love that. I think this could look really cool. And then you could like use these colors for the wallpaper and with like accents across the room to like,
yeah. I mean, we did have a little bit of highlights on that yellow pattern. So I'm going to actually use that, and we don't like that yellow anyways. So we're going to convert it to black and white because we don't like that yellow. It's goodbye. No more.
Yeah.
But let's do kind of like a lighter version. Yeah, something like that can help us see some of that yellow. I mean, some of that highlight.
Yeah.
And then just click Command or Control on that thumbnail of the mask. And then we're just going to borrow that selection. And then hit a little bit of multiply. Oh, I think I did the opposite selection. We want to inverse it so that the white shows on the wall.
Nice. I think that's a very fun way to incorporate the whole thing. But it is that time now. It is about 5 minutes left. So why don't you give us a quick recap of what we did today and tell us where we can follow you and get in touch with you if we want to work with you. And then we
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we had a lot of fun today and yesterday, actually. So you have the opportunity to check out some of the work that we did. We experimented quite a bit with this really neat inspiration. Excuse me, run out of my voice already. That's how much we've been into this. And this inspiration from James Webb Space Telescope images, and we turned it into this digital interpretation. And thank you for being part of it. We got to do some really neat mock-ups here on different spaces, on wallpapers, on posters, and on some really cool pillows. You can definitely check out some of my work on Behance because Behance is pretty cool, you know? So we've been keeping up here on Behance doing some live streams also much like this, but unfortunately without Annika, which is really, really sad. But I will be keeping up with you guys out there. Everything across the board is Cyn Lagos. And if you do are excited about any of this work and you feel inspired to get a print of your own, you can always find those prints available on cynlagos.com.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Why don't we look at the patterns one more time and take a look at them before we say bye? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So some of these might actually make it to the shop, which would be really cool. I'm really inspired by that mock-up we just created.
Yeah,
specifically.
I think I really love the wallpaper and the artwork, like these two, the ones that you created, Cosmos and the other one. I think that the favorite one is also my favorite.
Yeah, the
But
Cosmos, this one. Yeah.
yeah. But I love that we learned so many new techniques of making mockups today and yesterday alike with all the blend tools and just using one single technique in multiple different ways and experimenting and not being afraid of doing that. So thank you so much, Sin, for showing us
Yeah.
your workflow and a different way of thinking and exploring the same tools that we use in our everyday life, but maybe just
Yeah.
are too afraid of doing it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for joining us here on Adobe Live once again. For you all joining us in chat, thank you so much for being here, asking all the amazing questions that you have. And stick around for the XD challenge right up next. But Adobe Live will be back tomorrow with our evangelist for a full day of masterclasses, followed by a new episode of Office Hours with Andrew Hawkradle and Nick Longo. So stick around for all the fun this week, and we will see you next time. But bye for now.
Bye.